All right. Good morning, everybody. I hope this all works. Let's see if there is a stream. Oh, hooray! Yes, there is. And I can hear myself. That's good enough. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening. If you are on the other side of the planet, happy 20th of January. I know there's political stuff happening later today. I am not a part of this. I'm on the other side of the planet. I'll have to wait until whatever happens today hits our country. But yeah, it's the next week, and I figured we'll try to do the thing where I try to be productive in the morning. And you can, we start talking about stuff, and maybe later I even try to write stuff in that thing that is never going to be a book. Sort of. Hey, good morning. Yes, it is Inauguration Day. Hello, Britain. Long time no see, and if all things go well, this won't be the last time we talk today, will it? I mean, technically, it'll be tomorrow to me, because your 100th thing is coming up in 17 hours, I guess. So you'd better get some sleep later on. Also, dear Demidrek out there, I have a question for you. You don't need to answer this in chat, but since you have become a channel member, you'll get a personalized, cheers and shout out thing in one of the videos. Let me know which name you want me to use for that, in case it's not supposed to be your YouTube account name. So I don't know, send me a message either on Discord or email or whatever else you prefer. If you don't want to do this in public, like here in stream chat, but please let me know so I can do that. It'll be one of the pirate videos because those are the ones that I'm currently doing where I feel like doing like the shout outs makes more sense in those kind of videos compared to say the weekly update video or those stuff that gets too political, because that's usually I don't want to pull you into me getting mad about someone else. That feels wrong. So it will be one of the pirate videos, possibly The Pirates by George MacDonald Fraser. Hey Chantel, how you doing this evening? So yeah, how was your weekend? Mine was better than expected in a lot of ways. I went to a concert on Friday, very spontaneously, and it was fun. And then I did read a lot of pirate stuff over the weekend. That was also fun. And then I recorded the video for On Stranger Tides by Tim Powers, and then decided that it wasn't good enough. So I'm going to re-record it this afternoon, hopefully. And then I started reading Speculative Whiteness by Jordan Carroll, which is a good book so far. If academic texts on science fiction and the alt-right are the kind of books you want to read, but it's very interesting so far, and we'll see. I was thinking about messaging the author if we can have a conversation for the channel, because it's certainly the kind of topics that I'm interested in. And he's been on a bunch of podcasts, but usually academic podcasts and political podcasts, which kind of makes sense because it's about the intersection between science fiction and the alt-right. But I haven't seen him on a book related or science fiction related podcast or something like that yet. So I figured maybe he'd be up for that. Certainly you have questions for him. Nice. Yes. So you did enjoy all the way to the end your reading of The Broken Sword, Britain. That's good. Live Ship Traders is really good. There's one thing happening in the third book that has stayed with me, and I was very, very unhappy with it when I read the books like years and years and years ago. That must have been like almost like 10 years ago. So I would have to I'm going to reread them at some point. So I definitely am not looking forward to this again, but I am curious to find out how I think about it nowadays compared to back then. Well, Britain, it's not necessarily the no politics zone. I just feel that if I shout out one specific, because I don't do the here's all my Patreon backers kind of thing at video's end. If I just like shout out one specific channel member or Patreon backer or whatever, right? And it is a video that is very clearly political or maybe even drama, me being mad at some other booktuber or whatever, that ties that specific person into that specific beef. And I don't want to do that because I feel that's unfair without, having heard, without knowing their views on the subject matter. So that's why I, try to do that for just book discussions, and I'll still be political in those as well, because you can't be not political, of course, but I feel it's fairer that way. The pirate, yeah, there is that, although I mean, so here's the thing: like Live Ship Traders, I think is an incredibly interesting book in a series in this regard, because it does examine some very interesting ideas about masculinity and the sort of expectations we have towards men, or used to have, depending on where you live, and so forth. Which is why I think the character of Kyle in that book, in those books, who is hated by a lot of readers, is a really interesting character, because he's certainly not a good guy, but you can see, and this is Robin Hobb doing Robin Hobb things, but she's really examining what it means to be to grow up a man, be expected to organize the family, be the breadwinner, be successful at doing all of these things, and what those kind of expectations can turn you into if you think that that's kind of what defines you as a person. And obviously that's something that a lot of us have to deal with, but it's up to that point, which is like I think mid 2000s when those books were written, not much like epic fantasy looked at sort of these, examined it in that detail, and that's something I really appreciated about Live Ship Traders. Like obviously I don't like the character; he's a massive asshole, but the way it is possible to see how he ends up being that kind of person, and how that is much more like a larger sort of like structural demands on him as a man and so forth, and not just he being power mad or whatever, right? I think that's really helpful in that regard. Yeah, but still a massive dickhead. Hey Jen, how you doing? Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry to hear that you got the cold. I hope it's getting better, Chantel. But yeah, sometimes we do things and realize afterwards that yes, we got the cold for a reason. And then that, like 3 years ago, can't remember when that was. When COVID was still much more of a thing, right? I went to Athens for a heavy metal festival, and yeah, of course, I got COVID afterwards. Like, I mean, what was I thinking, right? In that situation, I was like, yeah, that's deserved. You spent 3 days in like an enclosed space with like 500 other people, everyone being heavily inebriated. Yes, someone spread something. That's just like how that works. Ideally, we are smart enough not to do that. I, on the other hand, am not always very smart. When you said you started the second book, you mean started writing the second book there, Britton? Yeah. So as I said, like I started reading Speculative Whiteness. I went through the introduction. I am now in part 1. It has like 3 parts, and they each relatively long chapters, and the whole thing is like, I don't know, 150 pages, something like that. Smaller monograph, academic one though. You can tell if like even your introduction has over 100 footnotes, you know what kind of book you're reading. Yeah, that's what I would call a red flag right there. If he has those kind of things, yeah, that he's probably gonna he might be spreading some sickness around. Yeah, 105 footnotes for the introduction, which has not even 20 pages. It has 16 pages and 105 footnotes, and the next chapter has 158 footnotes that I've already seen. What's nice about the book is that it is available through open access, so you can legally read it online without having to pay the insane prices that academic books still go for, because academic printing is even more fucked up than fiction press. Academic publishing is even more fucked up than mainstream publishing, which is just something really frustrating in a lot of ways. But what can you do? So yeah, that's something I'm going to finish probably today. It's not that long of a read, so maybe this afternoon after the gym or something, and then I guess I'd better get to Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor, which I still haven't started because I feel, I don't know, the pirate stuff kind of got the better of me, but I'm certainly at the end of the pirate stuff. I did read The Utopia of Rules by David Graeber on Friday, which was a really good book. I mean, I generally enjoy everything Graeber does or did, and Utopia of Rules is like 3 essays basically, and a long introduction. On some of that stuff has been reprinted in like excerpts or like re-edited in the essay collection from last year, the Ultimate Hidden Truth of the World. But he also talks about science fiction and fantasy literature in the 3rd essay there, the one on the dreams of science fiction and how they have been stolen. It's interesting thing if you can get a hold of it somewhere. I mean, it's free on Audible in America, so if that's something you're interested in, I highly recommend David Graeber talking about how bureaucracy kind of sucks or maybe doesn't, and how that impacts our lives in all kinds of ways. And just an interesting author all around. Been also thinking about maybe rereading The Dawn of Everything by Graeber and Bengrove, and it's a really, really good nonfiction book that I read when it came out and should probably reread. It starts out throwing shade at both Jared Diamond's Guns, Germs, and Steel and Yuval Noah Harari's *Sapiens*, and then quotes Ursula Le Guin in a positive way. So it's a good kind of good book. Also got recommended by Stephen Erickson. So generally good book if you've never read it. Yes, Memories of Ice. Although I think I do enjoy Memories of Ice. I think it does some really clever things near the end. I would not rank it as my favorite Malazan book, though. I think I do very much enjoy which ones? Midnight Tides I do very much enjoy, and Reaper's Gale I think is also really strong. I've come to appreciate Toll the Hounds more over the years. But yeah, I mean, they're all really good. Yeah, that that I can see, Jim. That might be, you know, with with great spices comes great responsibility, I guess. Hey, Kale. Good morning. No, this is not Discord. The thing is, I can, I guess, get some custom emojis or emotes for channel members now that I have like channel memberships, and I guess I could technically just port some of the Discord things over to here if I figure out how to do that. But then you'd still have to be a channel member to use them, which you know, I'm I don't know how I feel about the whole idea of putting stuff behind paywalls. It's just like difficult for me to square that with how I feel about stuff. But here we are. Um, yeah, Britain. I think that's something that most people have in common with you. Although I think I keep forgetting who it was. Someone I recently read about did exactly that, shit themselves, because they were trying to not get drafted into the military and forced to go to Vietnam. So they used that as part of their strategy when being called to the draft office. They did shit themselves in public, and apparently it worked. But I keep forgetting who it was. I would have to do research on where I read that recently, which I don't know if it's that important. But so yeah, there may be situations when you need to do that, is what I'm saying. Yeah, time zones are a bit of a hassle. I have still not figured it out completely. Like every time someone's talking to me, it's like, "Hey, let's do this and that." And I'm like, yeah, so let's set you settle on a time and then you fuck it up. It's like even within Europe, right? You're like Spain, not Spain, no, not Spain, but Portugal. Portugal is in the same time zone as the UK and Ireland, so it's GMT, while Germany is GMT +1, and I've had like issues with like you schedule a call with someone in Portugal or with someone in the UK and you agree on a time, then either you or the other person forgets that yes, that means like a different time zone for each of us, and then you're waiting for someone to turn up for like an hour. It's yeah, it's quite a thing. Yeah, I guess in that regard, I'm kind of lucky that where I live is a student town, and student towns are also very good when it comes to different food geared towards singles. Also, because of this being a very much a student town, we have like a large sort of like we've had like explicitly vegan restaurants for like years and years now already. So we're ahead of the curve there, which is a good thing. Yeah, that's like the thing that I guess I often forget is like that Australia does have like multiple time zones as well, because while it's you know basically one country, it's also just like an entire fucking continent and pretty big to too. Yeah, I figured that one out, Chantel. I mean, I know that you live in or live around California, so All right, guys, shall we proceed to being productive for a while? I think that's a good idea. So let's do this, and let's be back about 10. 9 my time. Gods, see, now I'm confusing my own time zone. Things are bad. So yeah, let's be back about 5 past the hour, and until then, let's try to get on top of all those things that need to be done. And we are back. How did you guys do? Did you get stuff done? Did you read? Did you write? Did you set stuff on fire? You know, be productive, I guess. I did, well, at least make some progress. I did clean up some emails. I did reply to some YouTube comments and stuff. Not enough, because I didn't do it all weekend, and that means you wake up and suddenly you have like 15 notifications or whatever, and then suddenly, yeah. Hey, Kat, how you doing? Good morning. And hello and good evening, Amanda. Well, I've never been to Dallas, so I wouldn't know. I've heard people not liking Dallas, but those are people living in San Antonio, so they may have regional prejudice there. I don't know. Yeah. So yes, I did reply to some comments and stuff like that, and read a long newsletter email that I got about the Monte Cristo sandwich, and of course the Count of Monte Cristo novel, which uh, I've been subscribed to the newsletter, The Sword and the Sandwich by Talia Lavin for like a year or two now, and she talks about the alt-right and fascism and sandwiches, which is an interesting combination. Like every Friday, yeah, she has like a sandwich of the week, which is when she writes about one sandwich, and it's always fun to read and interesting history stuff and things combined. And obviously I did enjoy her book. Well, enjoy is probably the wrong word, but like appreciate her book, Wild Faith, about the Christian right. Came out in October, which auspicious timing, I guess. Yeah, that's what I read on the Monte Cristo, and yeah, other emails and newsletters and stuff like that, and then catching up on comments. Some interesting thing. I received a lot of comments recently on one specific video, and that is the video I made for Olympus by Dan Simmons, which is a bad book. Even beyond the politics, it's just not a good, well-written book. But I've received a lot of people telling me how wrong I am and how stupid I am and so forth, all about that one specific video. So I assume either someone has recently done a group sort of reading of the book, or someone has shared it somewhere on the internet, because why is everyone suddenly just focusing on that specific book, right? I made videos for all of those Dan Simmons sci-fi novels to begin with, so why is everyone focusing on just Olympus? It's just weird. But I also just got a comment on my old video about A Voyage to Arcturus, to tie it back to what we talked about yesterday, Britain. And that was a positive comment. I like when people read weird books and go like, hey, this was an interesting video you made about a book that I don't know what to do about, because holy shit. Hey, Brick and Spines, how you doing? Yeah, well, fingers crossed this week will be better, Britain. I sure hope so. I'll go to a concert tomorrow. That will be interesting and fun. I also have to interview one band there, so that's going to be fun, I guess. Yeah, look, I wouldn't give it an 8, but I also would not give it like a 2 or 3 or whatever, right? It's Dan Simmons is not an untalented, or was not an untalented writer. I think in his later books, especially with Olympus, you can see how external stuff kind of breaks him, and that's specifically apparent in Olympus, because he wrote Ilium slightly before 9/11, and he finished Olympus after that, and you can see how that event kind of impacted the story, because suddenly we need to hate on radical Muslims in book 2, which were never even a thing in book one. So it just comes out of the blue for no reason whatsoever. It's never set up, and there's a bunch of things like that happening in Olympus, where you can just see things shifting in the world that impact the process of finishing a book. And even if you don't agree with my assessment of his politics, which is possible, I think it's still necessary to understand that the book is not a good book from like a structural perspective either. But yeah, and then you go to Flashback, and it's all out just weird racism and nothing more. But yeah, enough of that. I'm happy that people are at least appreciating me talking about A Voyage to Arcturus, where people grow tentacles from time to time, just because. Yes, she used that list, and it's been fun, especially when it's a sandwich she really hates. And there's a bunch of German sandwiches in there that she got really mad about, like Leberkäse and stuff like that. And it's I enjoy that. Yeah, and so that's why I still have to reply to a few comments, and that's what I'll do at the beginning of the next sprints, and then I'll dig back into the writing stuff, because I have to. I feel like I need to get some writing done, otherwise I'll lose sort of like the energy. I'm very much relying on inertia when it comes to things, and if I lose that sort of like ongoing inertia, then it's very difficult for me to pick up projects again. Yeah, that's Flashback is the dystopian one, Britain. You should avoid that. It's just really not good, in many ways. Beyond just also being incredibly racist in unnecessary ways. Like the one black character is a drug dealer in a prison who speaks in the most offensive old white man trying to write African American vernacular English, English vernacular, and it's so unnecessary in that situation, right? You didn't have to do that. You could have just written his language straight up. You could have not made him black. It's not essential in any way, except you wanted to be racist about someone. And you also wanted he's also racist about Japanese, and he's racist about Muslims, and he's racist. It's just unnecessarily bitter old man vibes. Now that sounds like a project there, Chantel. I'm sure that'll work out fine. Like what you get here a lot, or not a lot, but it has been something that a lot of the kebab places have started doing, is you take like the kebab bread and use that as the basis for like a pizza kind of thing, like put stuff on it, put cheese on it, put it in the oven. So that's something that has spread over the last, I don't know, 20 years or so, with a lot of like the kebab places. They usually market it as like Turkish pizza, which is obviously an interesting approach. Yeah, don't Britain. It's not worth it. Like I remember reading it when it came out back in the day, and that was already interesting, right? I was excited because I just read Hyperion for the first time, and I enjoyed it. It's like, hey, there's a new Dan Simmons coming out, and I read it, and it's like, holy shit, this is wrong. Like I was aware of it even back then, so yeah, and rereading it 2 years ago was not a good experience. Yeah, breaking spines. One could call it xenophobia. I think it's certainly that. I think it's what I tried to do when I did like the video series and read or reread all of Hyperion, Endymion, Ilium, Olympus, and Flashback in one go. You can see how Simmons was always conservative, and some of these sort of reflexes have always been in his books, right? He's always been very, very fond of the Western canon, and believed in the fact that, culturally, products of like the 19th century, mostly England and possibly partly America, but mostly England and continental Europe, 19th century was sort of like the peak of civilization in a lot of ways. And that is, already a reactionary thinking, but he still managed to sort of like keep it at that level. And then throughout the books, you can see him becoming more frustrated with, just general movements of progressive ideas. And then around 2001, he just like has this massive break, which, to be fair, something with 9/11 was that kind of rupturing kind of massive event that did rupture American culture in a lot of ways at the time. So you can see Simmons you can read him as one good example of seeing how American conservatism, or one specific strain of what you might call a comparatively harmless conservatism, shifted further and further right over the years. You can see him sort of being a perfect example of one strain in American politics in general through those books. But it's not a fun read, is what I'm saying. I have not read Goodreads reviews of Flashback, I think. I just yesterday read a bunch of Goodreads reviews of On Stranger Tides by Tim Powers, and it was certainly an experience to read those. Um, People don't like the book, which I kind of understand, but people are also incredibly good at not explaining and not explaining why they didn't like the book, or misliking the book for the wrong reasons, which was just like really interesting. One guy, one review complaining that the character, that the pirate captain wasn't as funny as Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean, was like, how is that? How is that like your criticism of a book? It's like, yes, Disney did license On Stranger Tides for the fourth movie, but this is a book from 1987, and you complaining that the captain described, which is not Jack Sparrow to be clear, is not as funny as Johnny Depp, and that's only if you think Jack Sparrow is funny, right? So that was like an interesting book criticism there. I don't necessarily know what you're describing there, Chantel, with that specific handheld food. Um, nice, Britain. That's so that's going up on your on Goodreads or on your letterbox or something, right? If you write it down, your review. So yeah, that's yeah. I better start reading fiction again. Like after last week's pirate stuff, I need to figure out whether I start with Death of the Author today or read something else first. I don't know why. I mean, I was excited to read Death of the Author, and then it came out on, last Tuesday, and it's been sitting on my phone since then, and somehow I couldn't get myself to starting it. No idea why. Maybe I need to just, just put it on when I go to the gym and go through it for like the first 2 hours or whatever, and then I'm hooked. Yeah, Kat, I don't think. I mean, obviously, I can't judge your taste in any way or form, but I suspect you would not be too happy with Hyperion and the way it um, does things. I, you know, I feel it's difficult to read. It's one of the things, right? Like with Hyperion, people obviously often praising it for being so good and all of that stuff and almost literary fiction. And I think the problem is like if you've spent time at a university in the last 20 years, possibly in the humanities, and have ever read any of the classics or so-called classics or whatever you want to call them, like important historical texts that Simmons is name dropping in his books, if you've ever done that and are aware of like how literary scholarship, literary studies and so forth has been going the last 20, 30, honestly like 40 years basically, but it takes a while for this to sort of like end up on what you might call undergrad or like early university levels, right? If you've ever done that, you can't read Hyperion and go and be impressed by what Simmons does, which is partly, I guess, the problem with Hyperion, right? He's in later books, he's actively talking about how university students don't understand the classics anymore, and it's how they're all like lazy women who don't do things and possibly have dyed hair, even imagine that, and how basically scholarship of scholarship of Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey basically stopped being relevant in the 1950s, and everything after that is bad. And he's so old white man that it is almost comical if it weren't so sad and if there weren't so many people still going and being happy about and being awed by it and being impressed by it. That's like I think the most frustrating part about it is like people that he gets away with it. It's like that so many people are unwilling to see him for the sad, pathetic kind of guy he is, and that's something that really frustrates me about the perception of Dan Simmons on specifically Sci-Fi BookTube. So wait, that specific food, you did eat that in Europe, or where's it connected to? Maybe that can help us figure out what it is. So yeah, I said like maybe I should just start on the death of the author and go with it. I feel it's a book that I really want to talk about. Because it does touch on some really interesting things. From what I can tell, right? I only read like the opening sequence, right? It touches on disability, on the way we present ourselves as authors in the 21st century, a lot of that kind of stuff. So it's going to be really meta in all those intersectional ways of how having a physical disability and how being, in this case, black in white America, how those things intersect. And yeah, it seems like a book that is worth talking about, but that also means that I feel I need to be sort of like mentally up to that to do the book justice. And the whole like pirate thing, the whole like tooth situation has sort of like really kind of knocked my plans for the year around quite a bit. So I don't know. Maybe that's part of the problem. But then, there's other books I could read instead, or I could just continue doing like nonfiction stuff at the moment because that seems to be working for me. Although I feel I've done enough pirate nonfiction for now. Oh, Angolan dishes. That's I have no idea. We have a restaurant from let me think. I think they're from Eritrea originally, the owners of that restaurant. They have like That's Northeast African cuisine. That is really good. They have like a really nice all-you-can-eat buffet, which is really cheap and really good. Hmm. I'll think some more about that dish thing. But was it also was it like Turkish inspired, or was it something else? Because a lot of our fast food has been like most German fast food is basically or like handheld kind of food has been done by different generations of migrant laborers and workers, like which is why we have like a lot of Greek cuisine in some parts, and we have a lot of Italian cuisine, and then we have a lot of Turkish cuisine, with like obviously the doner kebab being sort of like the flagship thing. Um, which is like another fascinating thing. You can see those different like layers of migration into Germany depending on where you go, what kind of restaurants are prevalent there, in a lot of ways. But because you have like several ways, you have like a lot of like, for example, like Polish cuisine stuff in around the Ruhr area, because they're during the like late 19th century, early 20th century, a lot of people from Poland moved there to work in the coal mines and the steel industry and stuff like that. And that's also where like the first sort of like Greek migrant laborers moved there, and then Italians moved to different places, because at the time in Western Germany, at the time, of course, in the 1950s and so, um, different parts of the industry became more important. And then you have, where you have like the car industry, like around Stuttgart, you have a lot of like Mercedes, and other big car manufacturers around that area. And they hired a lot of Turkish migrant workers in the 60s and 70s. So they're around around Stuttgart, you have a larger Turkish migrant community that has integrated very well in those areas, and has been around since the 60s and 70s, which is also why a lot of uh, Germans with like a Turkish background still drive, or for a long time drove Mercedes-Benz cars, because a lot of them just worked for Mercedes, and it became sort of the status symbol for them to have arrived in Germany is when you got your first own Mercedes. And it's an interesting thing there, because it's also something that is very heavily integrated in general society around Stuttgart. It's like to have like a a car from Mercedes, like they still call it Daimler, even though it's no longer Daimler, but just Mercedes Benz. And the saying is usually that Daimler gehört zur Familie, which means the Mercedes car is part of the family. And it's interesting to see how those values are among the first things that are sort of like taken over by people with like by migrants coming here and integrating into German culture and society. When you look at what the first things are, they that are fully accepted, which is going to the football game or watching football on Saturday, and and, and driving, making the car part of of your identity. That sounds like a really good thing that you're doing there, Britain. Have you read any like academic, like nonfiction books on the history of fantasy around that? I I've read a bunch last year or 2 years ago, and there's some interesting stuff there. I do really recommend Farah Mendelssohn's Rhetorics of Fantasy. It's very accessible, uses a lot of examples to do her specific way of categorizing or coming up with like subcategories for fantasy. I know that some people disagree with her approach to categorizing it, but I think it's a very accessible one. There's another one by Brian Attebery that goes in a similar direction. I just can't remember the title right now. So yeah, I have never done pirate books. I mean, videos on pirate books before. Obviously, I've read like Treasure Island a bunch of times, and I've read on Stranger Tides before I started doing the videos on it. But see, it wasn't what I planned to do, I think, is the main main thing here. I was ready to get back into the whole like Brandon Sanderson thing, and now that's obviously on the back burner for now. So pirate stuff. But I'm going to reread the Revenger stuff by Alistair Reynolds soon, so that's going to be fun. And maybe also, I mean, you bringing it up earlier, Life Ship Traders, right? There's pirates in there. There's a lot of books that have pirates in it. So that's certainly, I'm not running out of pirate stories, is what I'm saying. Interesting. No, I have no idea what that was. Chantal, I'm sorry, I've not encountered that. But it does sound interesting. Oh, interesting. No, I have not. I have not eaten that. Sounds tasty though. Chantal, Epic Pooh is an essay by Michael Moorcock where he talks about aspects of fantasy that he doesn't like, and he compares Lord of the Rings and Winnie the Pooh in it, together with like a lot of other stuff. And it's sort of like one of those infamous like essays on fantasy, because it was written in like the late 70s, I think, for the first time. He's like updated it since then, and it has made a lot of people very angry over the years, which is kind of Michael Moorcock's brand anyway. So, you know, I think it is available online for free somewhere. I think the main interesting fact with Lord of the Rings, or his perspective on Lord of the Rings, is that people read Epic Pooh as a full-on attack on Tolkien, whereas far more him attacking people that try to copy Tolkien, because like, well, Tolkien's not great, but at least he knew how to write books in a lot of ways, and everyone doing the same thing now is even worse at it. And I think that's sort of like where a lot of people go wrong, because Tolkien has the same way that later some other authors have, like very dedicated fans that as soon as they hear the name Tolkien or read the name Tolkien and hear the word criticism in the same sentence, they circle the wagons and they turn into like massive, there's a reflex to defend Tolkien no matter what, and read in text entirely as an attack on Tolkien when it is so much more at the same time. And I think that's something that has happened with Epic Pooh. I mean, he's critical of Tolkien, but the main focus is not bashing Tolkien. The main focus is bashing people that don't understand that you can be critical of Tolkien. It also has that wonderful Terry quote in it, which is just so good. When he calls Terry Pratchett the only Terry in Fantasyland able to write a full sentence, which is just like so good. Which I'm sure must have made Terry Goodkind incredibly happy, although I assume Terry Brooks is probably easier when it comes to that, and obviously has changed as a writer since 1970, when all he had written at that time was, of course, the Sword of Shannara, which is clearly part of exactly the kind of book that kind of style of writing that Moorcock was attacking at the time. Understandably so, because yes, the Sword of Shannara is incredibly bad. But I've even seen Terry Brooks admit to that. So, And Fairy Stories is also pretty good. There's a bunch more that I think are worth reading. There's it's called the the Literature of Reintegration or something like that, by Stephen R. Donaldson. He wrote 2 essays that are sort of basically the same thing tackled, and there's overlap. One is like a reworking of the older one by Stephen R. Donaldson on epic fantasy. He mentions Malazan. He does some other stuff in there, and I think that one is also worth reading. The newer version of that is in fantasy, the Journal of the Fantastic or something like that. One of those sort of academic journals on fantasy studies on, but it's free online, so you can read it. And I think it's linked on Donaldson's website as well, so you could probably get it through there. I think that's a really interesting one because it also kind of shows what Donaldson is trying to do with his books. He may not always succeed fully at what he's trying to do, but he's certainly trying it. So that's good. Well, Jonathan Swift is one of those authors that also was very good at making people angry. That's certainly true. All right, guys, shall we try to do the thing and be somewhat more productive again? And that is, let's call it 35. So that is 20 past. I'll be back, and then we can wind this all down, and I go to the gym. I also need to go to the pharmacy, but I can do that later today, I assume. Yeah, I know. I know the which one you're talking about. The one that is about solving, Irish famine problems by introducing cannibalism. It's you know, it's a wonderful example of misreading because a lot of people thought it was serious and not just political satire. So yeah, I'm excited for your Fate of Fantasy thing, Britton. I'm certainly going to watch it. All right, let's talk back in like 40-ish minutes. And I am back. How did y'all do? I did continue with all of the admin stuff, which is not what I wanted to do, but what I had to do. Also got more emails to go through for like the interview thing that I'm going to do tomorrow. So it was productive. It was just not writing, which is frustrating, but sometimes that's just like what it is. Yeah. So I'll be going off to the gym very soon now. I hope tomorrow will happen, sprints will happen, but since tonight is Britain's 100th podcast live stream thing, which is at 1 a.m. for me, I don't know how awake I'll be tomorrow morning. So we'll have to figure that one out when I wake up, I guess. So yeah. Just one of those things that sometimes priorities can be challenging. Yeah, I guess I will, in fact, start Death of the Author while going to the gym, and we'll see how I feel about it once I am back and have made like a start into it. Maybe then I'll be incredibly excited about it, and wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be good? I don't have much more to say. Certainly, this is going to be an interesting day. For a lot of people, I, will, try to record the weekly update today. Maybe if I'm lucky, I'll also manage to re-record my video on Stranger Tides. So there is some content for you in the next couple of days beyond just the weekly update. And yeah, have a great Monday. Let's hope this week will be better than last week. Let's hope it will be, not too bad in general. And yeah, talk to you guys sometime very soon. And thanks for hanging out this morning. It certainly makes getting up on a Monday easier.